Single origins are considered by many specialty coffee enthusiasts to be the only way to drink coffee at its fullest potential. Today, I'm here to offer my counter argument, a hill that I will die on, that blends are better than many people make them out to, and that over the years, they've gotten a bad rap. Was some of it deserved? Maybe. Is it deserved in 2026? Definitely not. Let's dive in. My hope is that by the end of this video, if you look at blends in a negative light, you might just have a little bit of a different take and you maybe will go out and give one a try. My name is Riley Westbrook. I am one of the co-founders of Valor Coffee and I have been in this industry for over a decade. Over the years, I've been in many different positions in the coffee industry, from roaster, barista, grain buyer, marketer. And at Valor, we roast and serve both really good single origin coffees and intentionally crafted blends. So a lot of my thoughts behind this video come from my actual experience. I've had so many good, expensive, high quality, high scoring coffees, but I've also had so many really, really amazing blends throughout the years that I still love to drink on a daily basis. So to start here, let's really dive into some definitions so we know exactly what we're talking about. Single origins, first of all, those are gonna be coffees from an individual country. That could either be a farm or a region, but ultimately the coffee that is being labeled and listed is traceable to its origin in some capacity. Whereas a blend is an intentional combination of two or more coffees to create a different coffee that is often marketed by a different name. Traditionally, think house blend, espresso blend, whatever. For us, we call our blends more fun names like Freethrow and Tanlines. But one thing to note here is that the term single origin can mean several different things. You see, a single origin could be coffees that come from a very specific lot. It could be coffees that come from a farm in general, and then maybe even a mixture of multiple varieties within that one single origin coffee. It could be coffees that are combined at the mill because a lot of farmers don't process their coffees on their own farms, or it could be coffees just from the country entirely. So I think that is one place to start. A lot of the coffees that we at home are drinking as single origin coffees are blends in the first place. Though they aren't marketed as blends, a lot of times they're blended at the co-op, they're blended at the mill. So even if you try to trace it back all the way, there are gonna be differences from even lot to lot on the farm. Many farmers even grow multiple varieties and then blend those together and then sell that product as one. So isn't that a blend? So that was a little bit of a sidebar, but let's really jump into how we got to this point in the first place. We had the pioneers of the industry really starting to push single origin, direct trade, and then into fair trade as one of their main marketing materials, really, with good intentions behind it. They're listing their single origins with the name of the farmer, altitude, processing, getting very specific about exactly what the coffee is. This was a good thing. It put the farmer front and center and then gave the consumers a way to expand their palate by tasting very, very specific things within their coffee pertaining to how that coffee was grown, how it was processed, all of the nuance that we come to expect from a coffee label today. This was a very new thing at that point. So I have absolutely zero complaints here. This was a good, great, amazing thing for the industry that has still trickled its way through and we still see today. And we follow a lot of these practices and always will. But with this changing of the tides from what we had before, house blends and whatnot, to single origin coffees and pushing all the details of the specific coffees, this really alienated blends, which at the time, to be fair, was probably a good thing. Before this push for single origin and really marketing specific coffees themselves, blends were just a dumping ground. You had either commodity coffee or Robusta or cheap stale product. It really did not matter because you were marketing the coffee as a house blend, as an espresso blend, as a French roast. And then even into the point where some of these bigger pioneers of third wave coffee were pushing single origin coffees, they still weren't even listing what was going on with their blends. And to this day, some of them don't. I will let you infer what that means about the blend, but whenever I pick up a blend, even from a third wave roaster, and I can't see what is in the product, I instantly think kitchen sink or stale product that's trying to be phased out. So in a lot of ways, when you tasted these coffees and they just weren't very good, blends got the reputation that they deserved at the time. Garbage in usually equals garbage out. You can't put poor product into something and expect it to grow in quality. So for that reason, in the early 2000s, even maybe into the early 2010s, you have people who don't like blends because they probably just actually aren't that good. But I think that we had a bit of an overcorrection. We went from single origins are great, true, to blends are and always will be trash, false. In sum, blends have a stereotype that we need to break. So let's get into the main meat and potatoes. Blending is a neutral technology. It can be used cheaply, the kitchen sink method, or it can be used intentionally, where we really R&D the coffees that are going into the product and make sure that they work well together and create something that is greater than the sum of its parts. So a blend in 2026 or beyond is not a way to hide something. A blend is a way to craft an intentional profile that you could not easily do only with single origin coffees throughout an entire year because of seasonality and harvest season specifically. Let's take, for example, a coffee I talk about on this channel all the time, Freethrow. This is the coffee that has been on espresso at our cafe since day one. It is chocolate forward with subtle fruit. That is the profile we are trying to hit with Freethrow every single time we change the components of it. It's built on purpose so that a casual drinker can taste the chocolate notes, and then someone who wants to go a little bit more in depth can see the fruit in the cup. And really, it can be brewed multiple different ways. If you really constrict the ratio down, it tastes one way. If you stretch it out, it tastes another way. And it's just a great drinker for everyone. And beyond that, when you're using a coffee for espresso specifically, a lot of times, if you're pulling a coffee that's gonna have milk added to it, you need something with body, a good base that's gonna hold up to milk. Blends typically do this better. So with this chocolatey and fruity profile, if we were only purchasing coffees at single origins and putting them in here, we would have to taste a lot more coffees to hit this very, very specific profile. I understand that I'm making it a little more vague, a little more top level. It is more nuanced than just chocolatey and subtle fruit notes. A lot of times we're looking for specific red fruits. We're looking for a certain balance of milk versus dark chocolate. And that's just something that is harder to do if you're going out and getting a specific single origin coffee. And so a lot of what I'm hinting at here is that coffee is just seasonal. And whenever a specific coffee from Ethiopia is harvested, it has a certain window of time for when that coffee is going to be tasting peak. And then same with Colombia, same with Rwanda, same with Mexico, the list goes on. So throughout the year, we want to be buying and using coffees at their peak freshness. And then whenever that ends, moving on to the next coffee. Sure, there's ways to mitigate that with cold storage and freezing and whatnot. I totally understand that. But for the most part, for most people, you're storing your coffee in a warehouse, you want to use it quickly. So if you're only using single origin coffees, you have a window of time when those coffees will work well for something specific. When you can boil it down to a profile, you can purchase different coffees throughout the year, mix them at different ratios, and then create a product that is very specific to what you're trying to do within the final cup. All of that to say, blends mean backing into a profile. You know what you're looking for, and you can get the specific coffees that you want for that specific profile, and then combine them at different ratios to make something that's exactly what you're looking for. A single origin coffee is going to taste more or less one way from a specific lot, from a specific harvest throughout that entire harvest. So a lot of times with this coffee specifically, we will use a washed coffee and a natural coffee. The washed coffee really helps with the chocolatiness, the natural coffee really helps with the fruitiness. So this coffee will be these components while they are in season. When we go out of season with this, we're going to buy other coffees from countries that are harvesting and have coffee that is more fresh. And then we're going to try to create a profile that tastes similar to what these coffees are giving us in this specific iteration of Freethrow. One of the difficulties for some roasters who choose to only use single origin coffees as their espresso or as a mainstay of their menu, and they return to that coffee year over year over year, is that from year to year, one coffee that's from the exact same lot on the same farm can taste completely different than the next year. And this is a scary place to be. What if one year is tasting really good and the next year it's not tasting as good? You maybe even don't want to buy it based on the samples that you received, but you don't have any other plans for that specific menu slot. This again is where blending can really come into play. A lot of times we return to the same coffees within our blend, and then we always list them on the label. and we like partnering with people and buying their coffee in bulk when we can and putting them in our blends and paying them a really fair price that makes their business viable. That is still all in line with the single origin mission. But when you have a profile, you do have a little bit more optionality than tying yourself to serving a specific single origin year after year after year as especially the mainstay on your menu, like your espresso or house drip. So we've talked about the mainstay profile, something that may be a little more simple or house espresso-ish, whatever. Let's talk about more advanced blends. Blends where we are really trying to create something really special, something like next level. That's what we try to do with a lot of our seasonal blends like Tanlines. So Tanlines is a summer seasonal blend, and we try to make this an absolute juicy fruit bomb. A lot of times this means blending, again, washed and natural coffees, but coffees that are going to be way more acid forward. So this year it is 33% Colombia, 33% Burundi, 33% Ethiopia. The Colombia is red honey, the Burundi is natural, the Ethiopia is washed. So very bright coffees. And whenever we taste these coffees side by side, they all taste pretty good. But when you put it all together, with this coffee specifically, it has a bursting candy sweetness, amazing effect that tastes good hot or iced. So in this case, the final product is greater than the sum of its parts. Another way that we see this happening lately is in a lot of barista competitions. If you watch WBC or Brewers Cup competitions at this point, you see a lot of people blending really, really high quality coffees. And this isn't by mistake. We can see that if we want to tailor something to a specific profile to give our guests or our customers, people buying our coffee online, a very specific experience, we can manipulate the final cup by tailoring a blend specifically to what we want to showcase. So back to the point from earlier that a lot of times people just use blends as the kitchen sink. However, they're choosing to sell their espresso blend. And then it says something along the lines of Central American blend. That is vague. And here we've always chosen to do something very more specific, which is to actually list every specific origin to the smallest unit of measure that we can go. That's not to say we've never bought coffee from a mill or a co-op, because we 100% have. We try to do that less and less and less as time goes on. We're able to make better direct relationships, not buy coffees on spot, so on and so forth. But we've always made it a point to put the exact coffees we're using, the exact process, everything that we possibly can about the specific coffee. And that's, a journey. We want to have sections on our website and so on and so forth where we can even explain those coffees more in depth, because each component in this blend does a vital part to the process of making a really good coffee. So a quick note on how the blends actually happen. A lot of times we will order green samples of coffees. We will sample roast those coffees, organize a cupping as usual, separate everything out. This is this coffee, this is this coffee. And if we know that there are candidates for a blend, we will take a cup of each of those coffees and then a third empty bowl, and then spoon very specific quantities of each into that final bowl. So if we want to create a 75-25 blend of something, it's 3 spoons of this cup and then 1 spoon of this cup. And then you taste that product and you can have at least a rough idea of what that's going to taste like. Then when we move towards R&D for production roasting of that specific coffees, that's the point where we will try different levels of blending to see exactly the final blend percentage that we want to use for that given menu slot. And then that's where we have one last difference between roasters, and that is, do you pre-roast or post-roast blend? We have done both here at Valor. We have A/B tested this extensively, and we know many other people who have done the same. I think Black and White, for example, has also done this and taken a similar path to us with blends. We thought post-roast blending was the way for the longest time, and that was before A/B testing it. We tried pre-roast blending, and it was just as good, if not better, in every blind taste test for us specifically. That's not to say we are sold on this indefinitely, but for now we are doing pre-roast blending, and we continue to iterate and try things based on bringing on a specific coffee. For context, pre-roast blending means that you are blending the green coffee together and then roasting it within the same drum at the same time. Post-roast blending is when you roast the coffee separately and then blend them after you roast them each. So I think the skeptic's view of this, which is totally valid, is that you're not roasting both of those coffees to their ultimate potential. And then I would say that the rebuttal from the other end is that, well, you are roasting them to the same roast degree, so it's more likely that they're gonna extract in the same way. Again, nuance here, and all that really matters is the final taste of that specific coffee. So I don't want to dive into semantics on the very specific solubility of doing things one way to the next. All that matters is the final taste and if people are enjoying the coffee that you're producing. Again, you are roasting coffees at different degrees, so how that lends its way to extraction can be debated. Kind of have to find a middle ground. It's not always gonna be perfect either way you do it. So again, taste wins. So maybe you're listening to this and you're like, this dude's an idiot. And maybe you're like, this dude's onto something. I guess if you're in the latter, I would really appreciate if you would like this video and subscribe to my channel, because I have more videos like this coming in the future. But one person who disagreed with me on this online in a public forum, godfather of coffee, George Howell. And George is someone that I respect and have always admired. I really love the coffee that he's produced and what he's done for the industry. So it was funny at a point to see him comment on a reel that we posted from our podcast stating that blends are back, baby. And they're pretty good. A lot of times we see people get into coffee with single origins and then finally find their way into good blends. And I think this honestly will probably continue. So I don't mean this in any form of disrespect, but it's more just a dialogue about what actually happened. George commented on this Instagram post and said, "Great way to put coffee farmers back to the commodity business." George, first of all, respect the game, still online, being a savage. I would say, in my opinion, it's better for me to be able to buy more of a specific producer's coffee and sell more of it, and then talk with them about what creates a viable business for them. Even whenever I have asked producers personally, would you rather a coffee be named after you and sell okay, versus would you rather a coffee have a marketable name? In our example, we have a coffee here called Ambrosia. So Ambrosia is a single origin coffee from a village in Ethiopia. The name of that coffee is a little bit less marketable than Ambrosia. So would it be better for us to name the coffee the more complex name, which is less marketable, and then sell less of the coffee, or to name it something more marketable and then sell more of the coffee so that we can buy more of the coffee from them, thus giving them more money in exchange and creating a more viable long-term partnership? The producers I've talked to have said they'll take the viable long-term partnership. Again, this doesn't work, to George's point, if we are paying commodity prices and just dumping coffees in somewhere. But if we are still highlighting in ways that we can, and then ultimately, and most importantly, creating long-term partnerships where we can buy more and more and more and more and more of their product, I think that's where the real win lies. We sell by far and away more free throw than we do anything else. The coffees that are in this coffee are the coffees that we buy the most of, and therefore the relationships that are technically on paper the best relationships we have. It's not something where we're trying to take advantage of them, but it's just a natural business transaction. We are not the hero to the farmer. We are in a business relationship. We purchase their coffee. The more coffee we purchase, the better price we get, because it creates a better long-term standing relationship. Doesn't mean we're undercutting on prices, doesn't mean we're trying to cheapskate them. We want them to have a viable business, and we want us to have a viable business, because that is a business partnership. All three of these coffees have the very specifics of exactly where they came from. It's 50% El Salvador Bourbollon, 30% El Salvador La Reforma, and 20% of Colombia Recruitment Lot, which is an origin blend of the same coffees that our friends Unblended do for the producers that are being recruited into producing more coffee for Unblended. In sum, I just really wanted to make the point that blends done with intention can be a really good tool for your tool belt of your home espresso setup, of your coffee bar, what have you. And then just a reminder, even your single origin a lot of times is a blend. So don't get really down the rabbit hole on one specific thing unless you want to, because it's the hobby and you can do whatever you want with it. If you want to try a really, really good blend, then give Freethrow or one of our seasonal blends, Tanlines, a try. Obviously I'm biased, but I think they're both really great and good representations of hitting a specific profile over and over and over again. Because the entire point, especially with a coffee that's on the menu year round, like Freethrow, is consistency. And if you disagree with me or agree with me, leave a comment below. Have you maybe started with only drinking single origins and then found that you really liked blends? Is it the opposite way for you and you have never had a blend that you like? Tell me, I'd love to hear. If you listen to this whole video and you're like, what is this dude talking about? None of this makes any sense to me, then you might be a beginner in specialty coffee, and props to you for staying around. If you want to learn more about specialty coffee vocabulary, verbiage, the whole thing, I have a 50-minute video that you can watch right here.